Ladies and gentlemen, gather around, gather around. Tonight, we return to the most important, most sacred, most legendary list in the English language. The 7 words you still can't say, even though everyone says them anyway. Yes, the 7 forbidden sounds, the 7 syllabic sins, the vocabulary Voldemorts of society. Words so dangerous that if you whisper them near a Wi-Fi router, the internet might apologize to you. Now don't worry, I'm not going to actually say them. Because apparently someone somewhere still believes that these words have magical nuclear powers. They think if a kid hears one, the kid will immediately explode into a cloud of smoke and bad decisions. But let's talk about it again. Because every few years, society updates its software, and suddenly new words are bad, old words are good, and nobody knows whether they should talk, type, whisper, mime, or just grunt politely. We're living in a world where words don't hurt people. But the people who hear the words, oh, they're emotionally flammable. One wrong syllable and boom. Everybody's offended, trending, canceling, apologizing. Unapologizing. Re-apologizing. And then pretending the original problem never happened. Back in my day, a swear word just meant the plumber dropped a pipe on his foot. Today, it means the entire Community Service Committee needs to hold a candlelight vigil to restore balance to the universe. You ever notice people don't hate the words? If you call someone a beautiful genius using an angry tone, they'll still fight you. Try it. Walk up to someone and shout, "You magnificent piece of art." They'll ask if you want to step outside. We're all confused. Society pretends it's allergic to offensive language, but the moment people stub their toe, suddenly they remember all 7 words, plus bonus DLC expansions. But here's the truth. Words are harmless. People gave them power. The day we stop being scared of sounds is the day we start actually listening. Until then, we'll keep collecting forbidden words like Pokemon. Can't say that. Can't say this. Ooh, this one is new. Rare card holographic insult. And that, my friends, is why the 7 words live forever. Because the moment the world tries to silence something, the human brain immediately wants to scream it louder. Thank you, and remember, if you can't say the words, at least think them with confidence. People fear words more than action. And the funniest part is that most of them don't even realize it. We live in a world where a single syllable can cause more panic than an actual emergency. You can walk into a room with a lit match, a wild dog, and a suspicious ticking noise, and people might stay calm. But whisper one of those 7 naughty little words, and suddenly everyone turns into a Victorian grandmother clutching her pearls, fainting dramatically into the nearest sofa. It's absurd when you think about it, because words themselves don't do anything. They don't swing punches, they don't break bones, and they don't steal wallets. But society reacts to them like they're loaded weapons with unlimited ammo, ready to cause destruction with one mispronunciation. The strange part is humans created these words. We invented the sounds. We agreed on what they meant. Then for some reason, we collectively decided that a handful of those sounds are too dangerous to be spoken out loud. It's like we built a house, painted a room, and then declared one corner forbidden. Don't touch that. Don't look at that color too long. It might corrupt your soul. Imagine explaining this to an alien. Yes, these words are dangerous. Why? Because we said so. The poor alien would probably get back on its spaceship and leave Earth immediately, wondering why a species intelligent enough to build smartphones can't handle simple vibrations in the air. People will tolerate all kinds of harmful behavior, but lose their minds when they hear a naughty word spoken at the wrong time. Someone can cut you off in traffic, steal your parking spot, lie to your face, and somehow that's forgivable if they smile politely. But say one taboo word in front of the wrong person, and oh boy, suddenly you're a villain in a lifetime ban-worthy scandal. It's like society has a scoreboard. Punches are bad, lies are bad, but words, they're the nuclear option. You could accidentally cause an international incident if you say one while holding a microphone. What makes this even funnier is that the same people who act allergic to these words use them all the time when no one is watching. When no one is watching. The moment they stub their toe, spill hot coffee, or check their bank balance, they magically remember all 7 words in perfect order with flawless pronunciation. It's like muscle memory. The words jump out faster than a reflex. But when they hear someone else say the very same words in public, they gasp dramatically as if they've just witnessed a crime. Humans are funny that way. They outlaw the words they privately enjoy. The fear around words gets even stranger when you think about children. Adults behave as if kids are these fragile, hypersensitive creatures who will instantly transform into criminals if they hear a single forbidden word. Parents react like they've been caught smuggling illegal goods if their kid hears a swear word in a movie. They cover the child's ears, pause the TV, launch into an apology tour, and then wonder why the kid grows up fascinated by the very words adults tried to hide. Because that's what humans do. Tell someone something is forbidden, and suddenly it becomes the most interesting thing in the universe. Kids aren't harmed by hearing these words. If anything, they're amused because adults treat those words like magical spells that can open portals to trouble. And when a child repeats one, adults act shocked, like the kid has summoned a demon. But again, words don't hurt people. Nobody has ever gone to the emergency room with a note that says a cause of injury. Overheard a bad word. Yet we behave as if that's a real possibility. The funniest part is that society pretends the meaning behind the word is irrelevant. It's the sound that's dangerous. Someone can use polite language to insult you in the worst possible way and no one reacts. But if someone says a forbidden word while paying you a compliment, suddenly it's offensive. You did a great job, you magnificent, and boom, outrage. The meaning doesn't matter. The intention doesn't matter. Every emotion, every nuance, every piece of context gets deleted, and all that remains is the word itself. It's like removing the steering wheel from a car and then getting mad when it doesn't turn the way you want. We've become so obsessed with censoring words that we create cartoonish replacements. Instead of saying the real thing, people say a freaking, a darn, a shoot, or a heck. It's like using diet swear words, zero flavor, zero honesty. You're still angry, you're still expressing the same emotion, you're just using a softer sound to cover it up. It's like putting a napkin over a volcano. The lava's still there, it's just pretending to behave. The most ironic part is that all these supposedly dangerous words came from somewhere. They weren't delivered by an evil wizard. People invented them because they needed a way to express strong feelings. Language is supposed to evolve to match the intensity of emotion. But instead of letting that happen naturally, society created a rule book about which emotions are allowed and which are too spicy for public consumption. And on that rule book is a list of outlawed sounds that somehow became more feared than real threats. Imagine a burglar breaking into your house. You yell at him and he says, "Hey, watch your language." That's how absurd society has become. We've reached a point where the word you use to describe danger is seen as more dangerous than the danger itself. People will ask you to be polite while you're describing something that's not polite at all. Please report your crisis using approved vocabulary. It's nonsense. Actions require effort, intention, planning, and sometimes consequences. Words require breath. Just breath! Yet somehow breath scares people more than violence or dishonesty. A politician can lie about everything under the sun and people shrug. But if they accidentally drop one forbidden word on a live microphone, the media explodes. Suddenly it's national news. It's like we're trained to ignore real problems and obsess over syllables. Words have become the fireworks show. Big, loud, colorful distractions from actual issues. People fear words because they fear being judged. They're not scared of the sound. They're scared of how others will react to the sound. Society taught them that saying certain words makes them bad, dirty, irresponsible, or unprofessional. So they follow the script, pretend to be shocked, and criticize others to protect their own reputation. It's a performance. A big, dramatic, exaggerated performance that gets repeated every day. Humans are great actors when it comes to pretending they hate certain words. But put them alone in traffic for 5 minutes and you'll hear an entire dictionary's worth of passion. This fear of words is passed down like a family recipe. Some households treat swear words like forbidden spells from an ancient book. But by doing that, they give the words power. They make the words bigger, louder, more mysterious. Because the only way a word can hurt someone is if they believe it can. Humans give the word the power to offend and then are surprised when they feel offended. It's like handing someone a sword and then complaining that the sword is sharp. Even stranger is the idea that some words are banned only in certain places. At home, fine. In movies, fine. In music, encouraged. But say the same word in school or at work and suddenly it's pure evil. It's the same word. The molecules don't change just because you walked into a different building. But society assigns rules and consequences based on location, as if the walls have moral preferences. So the big comedy of life is this. Humans created words, assigned meaning to them, gave them power, feared the power, and then blamed the words for the fear. Words aren't dangerous, people are ridiculous. And the more they fear those sounds, the more obvious it becomes that the fear isn't real. It's a performance, a ritual, a strange little dance everyone participates in, even though deep down, they know the whole thing is silly. Words don't hurt people. People hurt people. But society keeps pretending otherwise, because it's easier to blame the vocabulary than to confront the truth. Language evolves, but humans stay confused about what's offensive. That's the real comedy. Words are not static. They grow, shift, mutate, and sometimes disappear entirely. Every generation gets new slang, new ways to insult, new ways to express love. Joy, frustration, or rage. And every generation acts like the previous one has lost its mind. The words you used 10 years ago might make a teenager laugh today. Or worse, make them clutch their heart and call you a problematic. It's like society's language has mood swings. One day, a word is perfectly acceptable. And the next day, it's a crime against humanity. And you didn't even get a warning email. Humans, however, are terrible at keeping up. We like rules, but rules in language are imaginary. We want fixed meanings, but words have this sneaky habit of refusing to stay put. And that's what confuses everyone. Take the word literally. People argue over it all the time. You literally can't do that. Someone cries, thinking they're defending the English language, when in reality the speaker meant the opposite of literal. But dictionaries evolve. They now officially accept the exaggeration use of a literally, and still, people clutch their pearls. That's human confusion in action. Resisting evolution because they think the past was perfect, even though it was flawed and inconsistent to begin with. Humans want language to stay frozen like a museum exhibit while the world keeps spinning and words keep dancing. Every time a word evolves, someone somewhere dies a little inside. Slang is another battlefield. Words like a cool, a sick, or fire have gone through several reincarnations in meaning. Oh, sick used to mean unwell. Now it can mean amazing. Imagine trying to explain that to your grandparents. Oh yes, I'm feeling sick because that rapper's latest track was absolutely sick. They would look at you like you just tried to sell them moon rocks. Every generation gets offended by the next generation's words because they confuse the evolution of language with the collapse of society. They think if kids call something sick, then all morality is gone. And yet, this is how humans always react. Even technology hasn't helped. Social media accelerates the evolution of words, abbreviations, and symbols. Emojis alone have transformed communication, adding layers of sarcasm, irony, or affection that didn't exist before. A simple smiley face can now completely change the tone of a sentence. But older generations, or those who cling to a proper grammar, see this as chaos. They fear words evolving because they can no longer control the meaning. They can't regulate the tone. And control has always been a huge part of why humans get offended in the first place. If you can't control the meaning of a word, suddenly that word seems threatening. Then there's context. Context is the invisible seatbelt that keeps language from killing social interactions. Humans often ignore context, and that's where confusion grows. Say the same sentence in two different rooms with two different audiences, and you can get wildly different reactions. What's funny in one group is offensive in another. What's affectionate in one relationship is insulting in another. And yet humans act like words themselves carry universal moral authority. They don't. They carry meaning only because we assign it, and that assignment is constantly evolving. That's why humans are confused. They think they're fighting the word itself, when really they're fighting context they don't understand or can't control. Take insults. 20 years ago, calling someone a dorker might have been a mild tease. Today, calling someone a nerder might be an insult or a badge of honor, depending on the person. Words shift meaning as culture shifts. Words are little chameleons, and humans are like the people who try to pin butterflies to cardboard. It never works. Language is alive. Humans pretend it's dead so they can have a rule book and feel superior. And when words change faster than they can write new rules, they panic, complain, and demand censorship. Offense is another thing that evolves alongside language. What was offensive 50 years ago might be harmless today. What is harmless today might be offensive tomorrow. It's all relative. That's why comedians like George Carlin thrive. They notice the absurdity of humans trying to freeze the evolution of language. Humans want eternal certainty in a system that is by nature fluid. The results are hilarious. Society keeps inventing new words to replace old offensive ones, but inevitably the new words get old and offensive too. It's a never-ending cycle, like swearing in circles. Every generation thinks they've discovered the ultimate forbidden sounds, only to be proven wrong a decade later. Cultural differences add another layer of confusion. A word that's perfectly normal in one country might be considered highly offensive in another. Humor that's acceptable in one culture might be taboo in another. Yet humans constantly assume their understanding of offense is universal. They don't recognize that language is intertwined with culture, history, and collective experience. Misunderstandings happen, and people get offended for reasons that aren't even logical. That's why humans are always scratching their heads, wondering why someone got upset over a word they personally don't find offensive. They forget that offense isn't a universal property. It's entirely context dependent. Even within the same language, evolution creates multiple layers of meaning. Take the word "a bad." Once it meant negative, then it meant good. People freak out, arguing about whether bad should mean bad. Dictionaries eventually step in, providing multiple definitions, but humans continue to argue in cafes, offices, and online forums, clutching their keyboards like they're defending civilization itself. And while this debate rages, the word keeps evolving in the wild. It gains new connotations, new flavors, new cultural significance, and people keep trying to trap it under glass. They fail. Every single time. Social movements accelerate word evolution. Words that were once neutral can become charged. Words that were once offensive can be reclaimed. Words that were once invisible can carry political significance. Every human alive experiences this, whether they realize it or not. And yet people resist it. They fear evolution because it forces them to rethink their assumption. They want fixed meanings so they can be comfortable in their moral judgments. But language refuses to cooperate. It grows, shifts, bends, and mocks anyone trying to pin it down. Comedians exploit this beautifully. A word that used to be dangerous in one context becomes absurdly funny in another. And humor works precisely because of the tension between the human desire for rules and the reality of evolution. People get offended while laughing simultaneously. They know deep down that the word has changed meaning, but their social programming kicks in, making them overreact. It's a glorious contradiction, and humans are the punchline. The confusion is also amplified by education systems. Schools try to teach proper grammar, vocabulary, and spelling, creating a framework for communication. But they can't keep up with slang, idioms, internet culture, memes, or even the evolving pronunciation of common words. Kids leave school fluent in a language that technically doesn't exist in textbooks, while adults insist the language is fixed. And the adults get offended when children speak a language that doesn't obey their outdated rules. The kids aren't rude. They're linguistically innovative. The adults are the ones who are confused. Even literature highlights this confusion. Classic books contain words that were common when written but sound archaic today. Some words have shifted meaning so much that reading the original text can confuse modern readers. Yet humans often react by assuming the author must have been offensive or morally questionable. They forget that language evolves. They forget that humans evolve. They forget that offense is contextual. And in their frustration, they get angry at the words themselves rather than the humans who wielded them. Ultimately, humans are caught in a loop. They want language to evolve, to express new ideas and emotions. but they panic when it does. They want rules, stability, and universality, but they also want to enjoy jokes, memes, and cultural nuance. They want to avoid offense, but they want to push boundaries. This creates a constant state of confusion, which is exactly what makes language funny. Words evolve. Humans get confused. The cycle repeats. It has been repeating for centuries and will continue to repeat until humans either learn to stop worrying about fixed meanings or evolve into creatures that no longer care about offense, which, honestly, is probably never. Context matters more than vocabulary. Tone turns compliments into fights, jokes into controversies, and simple statements into social landmines. Humans seem to forget this constantly, as if words exist in a vacuum divorced from reality, from intention, from circumstance. But words don't live alone. They live in context. You can say the same sentence to 10 people 10 different times and get 10 completely different reactions. One person laughs, another gasps, a third writes a strongly worded letter to the editor, and the fourth immediately blocks you on social media. The word itself hasn't changed, the pronunciation hasn't changed, but the context, the situation, the mood, the relationship, all of it changes everything. And yet humans keep acting like words alone have this magical, universal moral authority. That's why we get into such ridiculous conflicts over language. Take compliments, for example. A simple "you're amazing" can lift someone's spirits or make them suspicious, depending on delivery. Say it with a smile and a wink, and the person might blush. Say it with a raised eyebrow and a sarcastic tone, and suddenly you're the villain in their personal drama. Humans have been doing this for centuries, but they act surprised when context changes meaning. The same compliment can be interpreted as flattery, as mockery, as flirtation, or even as threat. Words don't do this on their own. Tone, context, body language, timing, all of these shape how language is received. But humans keep forgetting that and blaming the words themselves. Now, jokes are the perfect example of this phenomenon. Humor depends entirely on context. A joke that slays at a comedy club might bomb at a family dinner. A joke that works with your best friends can trigger a workplace HR investigation. A comedian can craft a perfectly clever line, but the audience's mood, past experiences, cultural background, and even the weather can completely change the impact. It's not the word that's offensive, it's the context. Humans, however, act like the words themselves are dangerous chemicals. They panic, they tweet, they write angry blogs, and sometimes entire careers are ruined. All because the context wasn't understood, and they didn't consider it. Even compliments get weaponized in context. Tell someone you look great today, and if they're having a bad day or are insecure, suddenly it's condescending. Tell someone you handled that well, and if the wrong person hears it, they might think you're patronizing them. Context is like an invisible filter over every statement we make, and humans never account for it. We speak, we write, we broadcast, and then act shocked when the meaning shifts. It's like throwing a baseball and being surprised it doesn't hit the target you imagine. Because people aren't targets, and words aren't baseballs. Tone is another silent player in the game. A simple sentence can mean everything or nothing depending on how it's said. Sarcasm, enthusiasm, irony, affection, annoyance. Tone changes everything. A thanks a lot can be gratitude or resentment, and the difference is in the delivery. Humans seem to forget tone when they read something online. The words on the screen are inert, lacking vocal inflection, facial cues, or body language. And yet people rage, argue, and sometimes cancel each other over something that would have been perfectly clear in a conversation. It's context and tone, folks. Always context and tone. Humans ignore it, assign blame to the words, and act offended as if letters on a screen have feelings. History is full of examples of context changing the impact of words. Political speeches, literature, and media often get reinterpreted decades later. A phrase that seemed innocent or neutral in its time may appear shocking or offensive to future generations. Context evolves, but humans forget to account for it. They hold past speakers or writers to modern standards, ignoring the environment, the audience, and the intent of the original moment. Words stay the same, but context is fluid. And that's the real source of confusion, outrage, and comedy. Humans want permanence in an impermanent world. They want a fixed moral compass in a universe of shifting meaning. Everyday conversations are loaded with context traps. Imagine someone says, "Nice job," depending on context. It could be sincere praise, sarcastic mockery, or a subtle warning. Humans instinctively overinterpret, underinterpret, or misinterpret depending on mood, preconceptions, and personal biases. And the irony is that most misunderstandings could be resolved instantly by asking a simple question. Wait, what did you mean? But humans rarely do this. They react emotionally first and rationalize later. The words themselves get blamed, even though it's the surrounding context that caused the confusion. Even cultural differences illustrate this absurdity. A word or phrase in one culture may be harmless or flattering, but in another it may be deeply insulting. Humans often assume universality when none exists. They forget that context includes not only immediate social cues, but also cultural norms, historical baggage, and shared knowledge. A compliment in one place may be a declaration of war elsewhere. Words alone don't carry moral weight. The context determines impact. Yet humans continue to punish words as if they were intrinsically evil. Social media amplifies this problem. In a 280-character post, context is often stripped away. No tone, no facial expressions, no situational awareness. Humans write, humans raid, humans get offended, humans protest. Entire movements of outrage can start over a few words taken out of context. A joke meant for friends, a casual comment meant for humor, even a heartfelt sentiment can be interpreted as hostile or insensitive. The words didn't change. The context was misread. But humans instinctively assign blame to the vocabulary, not to the circumstances. This obsession with words over context creates absurd rules. Certain words are banned in schools, workplaces, and media. Yet those same institutions reward effective communication, creativity, and clever expression. Humans try to enforce universal rules while ignoring context, tone, and intent. A teacher may say, "No swearing in class," but a student can make an equally offensive joke in math class using approved words. Humans don't notice the inconsistency, but they notice when the wrong word is used. It's context, people, context, but rules don't account for that. Comedians like Carlin thrived on this tension. They understood that the same words could entertain, provoke, and offend depending on how they were used. The outrage often came not from the words themselves, but from the misalignment between audience expectation and delivery. The comedian's art is to manipulate context, to twist tone, to shift perception, and to hold a mirror up to human absurdity. Words are the raw material, context is the lens, and the result is laughter, groans, or outrage. Humans act shocked because they forgot the lens exists. Even in relationships, context changes everything. A simple "you're crazy" can be endearing, playful, or aggressive. A "you're smart" it can be sincere, sarcastic, or condescending. Humans navigate these subtleties intuitively sometimes, but missteps are inevitable. Yet when misinterpretation occurs, people blame the words. They don't blame the context, the tone, or the delivery. They blame the vocabulary itself. That's why humans are always confused, always offended, and always creating rules that can't work in the real world. Chi1 also interacts with timing. Say something at the wrong moment and it explodes. Say the same thing at the right moment and it soothes, entertains, or impresses. Timing is invisible, intangible, but critical. Humans often fail to consider it. They treat words as isolated bullets, forgetting that timing is like the trajectory of the bullet. The same words fired at different moments hit different targets, or miss entirely. Yet humans continue to blame the words when reactions go wrong. Irony and sarcasm complicate this further. Humans often fail to detect irony, especially in written communication. A statement meant to be absurdly humorous is interpreted literally, and suddenly offense erupts. Words themselves are neutral. Context and tone define meaning. Humans forget this and act as if letters themselves carry judgment. The result is endless confusion, debates, arguments, and outrage, all over context, all over tone, and almost never over the words themselves. Even praise can backfire. Complimenting someone's creativity or work ethic can be misread as criticism depending on the listener's state of mind. A good job in front of a peer can be a subtle insult. Oh, well done at a public event can create jealousy. Humans constantly misread the context and blame the language. Context is everything, yet humans act like the vocabulary is a universal key. Ultimately, humans are obsessed with vocabulary, but context shapes reality. Tone, timing, culture, personal history, and social dynamics. All of these determine how words are received. Ignore context, and every word becomes a potential landmine. Recognize context, and even taboo words can be harmless or funny. The confusion comes not from language itself, but from humans pretending language exists in isolation. Context is the invisible force controlling the meaning of every syllable, yet humans constantly misplace blame on words themselves. Everyone pretends to be offended, but slips into swearing during real pain, and that's where the human comedy becomes obvious. People have a bizarre relationship with language. They claim words are dangerous, but then they demonstrate, in the most predictable way possible, that words only have power when we react to them emotionally. A stubbed toe, a burned finger, a spilled coffee, a sudden flat tire, and suddenly the forbidden words escape like they were trapped in a prison cell. Those same people who lecture about propriety, decency, and language morality will instantly perform a verbal acrobatics display, shouting, growling, and inventing new combinations of forbidden words. The very words they act allergic to. They spew them without hesitation at the first hint of pain, frustration, or surprise. Humans are funny that way. They claim they fear language, but only because they've decided to fear it in controlled situations. The moment real emotion hits, fear disappears and words become a survival tool. Think about it. When someone hits their thumb with a hammer, the first thing that escapes their mouth is often the word society has deemed inappropriate for polite conversation. And yet, they didn't consult a dictionary first. No one stops mid-yelp and says, is this word socially acceptable in a public place? No. Pain is universal. Pain trumps rules. The forbidden words are now tools of expression, tools of release, tools of catharsis. Humans have instinctive respect for rules in the abstract, but a complete disregard for them when reality intervenes. That's the beauty of it. The words are powerless except for the psychological performance humans give them. And yet humans act as if the words have independent agency. It gets funnier when you notice that people are incredibly selective about this. They'll swear profusely in private among friends, in cars, or in the shower. That's fine. But mention one of the 7 forbidden words in the presence of an authority figure in a public meeting or during a family dinner, and suddenly it's a moral catastrophe. Humans have an incredible talent for compartmentalizing language. What's acceptable in one setting is catastrophic in another. Pain, stress, and frustration erase all these boundaries. That's why swearing feels almost sacred in those moments. It's honest, immediate, and uncensored. The forbidden words suddenly serve a function that polite language cannot provide. Children are fascinating in this regard. Kids quickly learn that certain words are forbidden, but they also learn that context matters more than the rule itself. Witness a child stub their toe or get frightened, and they immediately repeat the words they were told never to say. The innocence of the moment, combined with the raw emotion, renders the social prohibition meaningless. Humans grow up hearing lectures about decency. Yet they also watch adults perform exactly the same behavior when experiencing discomfort. Society teaches kids to fear words in theory, but demonstrate their utility in practice. The contradiction is hilarious if you step back and look at it. Even in professional settings, the pattern holds. People maintain decorum and politeness, discussing quarterly reports and deadlines with language that conforms to corporate standards. But mention a sudden mistake, a coffee spill, or an urgent, chaotic problem, and the carefully constructed facade crumbles. Outcome expletives, inventive profanity, and language creativity at its finest. Humans act as if societal norms govern them, but it's all a performance, easily disrupted by physical or emotional stimuli. Words that were taboo moments before are now the only acceptable form of communication. Pain and frustration don't just trigger swearing, they enhance it. People develop what could be called emotional grammar. The greater the intensity of the pain, the more elaborate, expressive, and colorful the language becomes. It's almost like a scientific experiment. Stub your toe and notice the rapid escalation in complexity, volume, and creativity of the forbidden words. Humans instinctively expand their vocabulary when facing discomfort. The words don't gain inherent power. Humans imbue them with power through emotion, timing, and delivery. The whole system is perfectly consistent, chaotic, and hilarious at the same time. Humans also have a strange capacity for meta-awareness in these moments. The moment the words escape, many people recognize the impropriety and laugh, grimace, or apologize midstream. They are fully aware of the rules they are breaking but cannot stop themselves. Pain overrides reasoning, context overrides social expectations, and instinct overrides etiquette. The result is a comedic performance, the simultaneous release of forbidden words and acknowledgement of their social taboo. It's one of the most consistent examples of human absurdity. Even accidents, beyond physical pain, provoke this phenomenon. A missed bus, a lost wallet, a computer crash, or a spoiled meal, suddenly forbidden words appear like trained soldiers called into action. Humans invent variations, mix and match phrases, and create new ways to express frustration. The creativity involved is astonishing. Humans will swear in metaphors, invent compound expletives, or adapt old ones in innovative ways. The forbidden words become instruments, paintbrushes, and tools of human expression under the right conditions. The inconsistency is what makes it hilarious. Humans act offended, shocked, or appalled by certain words in controlled settings, yet spontaneously use those same words in moments of real-life struggle. There is no moral coherence here, no logical pattern, just instinct. Society pretends that words carry fixed meaning and moral weight, but anyone observing human behavior closely will see that meaning is situational. Moral weight is situational, and the appearance of propriety is the only thing fixed. Words themselves are inert. Humans give them life. Humans decide when they are dangerous. Even literary and historical accounts show the same pattern. Writers, politicians, and public figures have been censored, criticized, and punished for using certain words in public. Yet private correspondence reveals that the same individuals freely employed all manner of colorful language. Human behavior consistently demonstrates that it is not the words themselves that offend or shock, but the context and social expectations surrounding them. Pain, emotion, and urgency remove the constraints, exposing the artificial nature of the taboos. In comedy, this principle is essential. Stand-up routines, sketch comedy, and improvisation often rely on the sudden breaking of language taboos in high-emotion contexts. The audience laughs not because the words are inherently funny, but because the tension created by social expectation is resolved by the immediate, honest, and exaggerated human reaction. Humans recognize the absurdity of the rules and enjoy seeing them violated in a controlled, exaggerated, and humorous way. The forbidden words are a tool, the context is the amplifier, and the human reaction is the punchline. Pain and emotional intensity act as a universal translator, leveling the playing field. It doesn't matter your social class, education, or cultural background. Humans in pain tend to use similar patterns of language. There is almost a collective instinct to reach for certain expressions when faced with adversity. Forbidden words, long considered dangerous, become standard operating procedure. Society may try to enforce decorum, but humans collectively ignore it when instinct takes over. It's like a secret agreement. Rules exist until reality intervenes, then survival and expression take priority. Even in relationships, this dynamic is clear. Couples argue, friends joke, family members clash, and the intensity of emotion triggers language that would be forbidden in calm circumstances. Words that are censored during polite conversations suddenly flow freely during disagreements, confessions, or heated debates. Humans act as if decorum is always optional, which in fact it is, but they are trained to pretend otherwise. That's why these moments are both relatable and hilarious. Humans are endlessly creative when rules are momentarily suspended. The phenomenon is consistent across culture. In every society, humans have a set of forbidden words, a social performance of propriety, and an instinctive override mechanism in moments of pain or surprise. The universality of this behavior suggests that it is less about the words themselves and more about human psychology. Words are markers, indicators, and instruments. Emotion is the engine that gives them power. Humans misunderstand the source of that power and assign it to the words, rather than their own reactions. Humans are masters of creating absurd rules around language, and then failing spectacularly when reality interferes. The forbidden words are only forbidden until they are useful, and they are celebrated, elaborated upon, and used creatively. Humans act offended in theory, obedient in practice, and ecstatic when instinct overrides all constraints. Pain, emotion, and urgency reveal the truth. Words are tools, humans are the operators, and social rules are theatrical performances we constantly update, ignore, or reinterpret. Even when humans try to censor themselves, they fail. A sudden loud noise, a surprise event, or a stressful situation triggers the same linguistic explosions. The self-censorship is optional. The instinct is compulsory. Humans act as if decorum is universal, yet instinct overrides training and societal expectations every time. It is this tension between learned rules and instinctive reaction that creates endless humor, irony, and insight into human behavior. In essence, humans treat words as sacred, untouchable objects until reality hits. Pain, emotion, and stress reveal the absurdity of this belief. The forbidden words, long feared and regulated, suddenly become the most honest, expressive, and necessary tools in the human toolkit. Humans pretend to fear them, publicly condemn them, and perform outrage theatrically, while privately demonstrating their indispensability. The cycle repeats generation after generation, human after human, situation after situation, and the comedy of language continues uninterrupted. Banning words gives them more power instead of reducing impact, and this is where human absurdity shines in all its glory. The moment a word is forbidden, labeled dangerous, or deemed socially unacceptable, humans immediately elevate it to mythical status. They whisper about it in hushed tones, they write about it in secret, and they treat it as if it possesses some magical energy capable of altering the fabric of reality. The more society tries to suppress a word, the more attention it receives and the more people want to use it. This is human nature, pure and simple. You tell someone they cannot do something, and their brain immediately prioritizes that thing as top-level desirable. The exact same principle that causes teenagers to rebel applies to vocabulary. Ban it, and they will chase it. It's hilarious to watch adults struggle with this. Parents, teachers, and institutions all say, do not say this word, as if the prohibition alone could magically erase it from existence. But humans do not function that way. We are curious, inventive, and contrarian. Telling a child, a teenager, or even a grown adult that a word is forbidden only increases its allure. The forbidden word transforms into a treasure, a secret weapon, a symbol of rebellion. Censorship creates desire. Humans assign power where no power exists, projecting fear and authority onto mere sounds. The word is inert. Humans make it dangerous. Look at history. Every time a word has been banned, societies create euphemisms, synonyms, slang, or coded language to circumvent the rules. Forbidden words mutate, evolve, and proliferate. People invent new forms faster than authorities can suppress them. The act of banning does not eliminate language. It sparks creativity. Humans do what they do best. They find loopholes, twist rules, and use forbidden sounds in clever ways. It's almost like trying to put a lid on a volcano. The pressure builds, and when it erupts, it does so spectacularly. The absurdity is compounded by the fact that some forbidden words are entirely arbitrary. There is nothing inherently dangerous about the combination of sounds or letters that society labels a taboo. A word doesn't become harmful because of its phonetics. It becomes socially charged because humans agree that it is. It is human consensus, social convention, and collective fear that gives the word weight. Ban it, and that weight increases. Humans respond as if the word carries actual danger, as if saying it will summon chaos or punishment. It never does. The danger is imaginary, but humans react as though it's real. Even in literature and media, the same pattern holds. Books that were once censored for language are now studied, celebrated, and quoted freely. The words that once carried so much weight have lost their shock value precisely because humans have repeatedly encountered them. Exposure diminishes fear, and the repeated suppression of a word only highlights its cultural significance. Banning words may temporarily restrict usage, but it also ensures that the words are remembered, analyzed, and immortalized. Forbidden words become legendary not because of intrinsic power, but because humans give them mythic status. The phenomenon extends to comedy. Stand-up comedians exploit the power of forbidden words precisely because society fears them. A single expletive uttered in the right context generates laughter, shock, and applause. The word's impact is amplified by the knowledge that it is prohibited. If society did not ban it, the word would be mundane. Its humor derives from transgression, from the thrill of defying rules. Human psychology is wired to respond to taboo, and comedians wield that knowledge like a scalpel. The word itself is harmless. The context, audience awareness, and societal rules create the effect. Social media magnifies the effect of banned words. When a platform labels content as inappropriate or censors language, the forbidden words gain instant notoriety. Humans are naturally drawn to what is labeled forbidden, prohibited, or offensive. People will screenshot, share, and discuss the content that society wants to suppress. Ironically, the attempt to limit exposure often guarantees wider circulation. Banning words online acts as a megaphone, amplifying attention rather than reducing it. Humans are predictably contrarian. Tell them something is off limits, and their instinct is to seek it out. This pattern also reveals a deeper truth about human psychology. Humans confuse symbols with reality. Words are symbols, not threats. But when society bans a word, it treats it as a weapon, an object capable of inflicting harm. People internalize this, behave as if the word has intrinsic power, and respond emotionally. In essence, the word's forbidden status creates the danger humans imagine. Remove the social prohibition, and the word becomes ordinary, harmless, and mundane. The power was never in the letters. It was in the fear humans assigned to them. Even children intuitively understand this principle. Tell a child a word is forbidden, and they immediately imagine it as the ultimate tool expression, the one that adults fear most. Curiosity spikes, and they experiment with the word in safe or secret contexts. They whisper it in the hallway, write it on paper, or use it in private jokes. Humans are naturally drawn to transgression. The ban itself is what makes the word powerful. The act of suppression guarantees fascination, memorability, and emotional engagement. The irony is that bans often fail to achieve their stated purpose. Rules prohibiting words rarely eliminate their use. They simply relocate it. People say the forbidden words in private, among friends in music, online communities, or coded language. Language adapts. Humans adapt. The words survive, evolve, and sometimes proliferate beyond their original reach. The attempt to control language through prohibition is like trying to stop the tide with a broom. It is futile, amusing to observe, and highlights human persistence, creativity, and stubbornness. Historical examples abound. From literature to theater to film, attempts to ban words have repeatedly failed to erase them from memory. Censorship guarantees longevity. A word that is suppressed becomes a point of fascination for scholars, artists, and ordinary people alike. The forbidden word becomes a symbol of rebellion, curiosity, or cultural critique. Human psychology ensures that what is forbidden is valued, remembered, and shared. Banning words may suppress casual usage, but it increases overall attention, cultural significance, and emotional impact. Comedians like George Carlin understood this instinctively. They recognized that words only gain power when society fears them. Carlin's 7 words you can't say on television didn't gain cultural notoriety because the words were inherently magical. They gained significance because society feared, prohibited, and dramatized them. By exploiting the fear, the taboo, and the absurdity of censorship, Carlin turned the forbidden words into instruments of social commentary and comedic genius. The audience laughed not just at the words themselves, but at the societal overreaction they represented. Even modern movements reveal this dynamic. Activists, marketers, and influencers often highlight forbidden words or taboo topics to draw attention. The very act of labeling content as prohibited amplifies its visibility, popularity, and impact. Humans are predictably drawn to transgression. The psychology is simple. Banning something transforms it from ordinary to extraordinary. Words themselves remain unchanged, but human perception inflates their importance. Efforts to restrict language, therefore, often have the opposite effect, giving the forbidden words far more attention than they would have achieved on their own. This applies in personal relationships as well. Telling someone not to say a word or not to discuss a topic often guarantees that the subject becomes central to their thoughts, jokes, or conversations. Human desire is fueled by prohibition. The act of banning words rather than reducing their usage amplifies their presence in thought, discussion, and expression. Curiosity, rebellion, and humor all converge, ensuring that the forbidden word becomes central to social dynamics rather than peripheral. Even casual language demonstrates this principle. Words that are technically acceptable can gain forbidden status through social enforcement. If a friend, parent, or colleague reacts strongly to a word, humans internalize the warning and immediately assign weight to the previously neutral sound. The perceived danger, not the inherent meaning, transforms the word into a forbidden object. Social enforcement creates taboo, which in turn increases curiosity, usage, and emotional intensity. Humans are experts at creating, perceiving, and reacting to artificial boundaries. Ultimately, banning words is a comedy of human psychology. The more society tries to eliminate them, the more powerful, significant, and culturally charged they become. Humans assign power where none exists, fear symbols instead of reality, and use language to express rebellion, creativity, and identity. Words themselves remain neutral, silent, and inert. Their cultural impact arises entirely from human perception, reaction, and emotional investment. Banning words, therefore, guarantees their prominence, perpetuates fascination, and transforms them into symbols far larger than the letters themselves. Humor is the best way to reveal the absurdity of language rules. And if you pay attention, you'll see that humans have been demonstrating this truth for centuries, mostly without realizing it. Think about it. Humans create rules for language, restrictions, lists of forbidden words, guidelines for politeness, etiquette, grammar, and decorum, and then comedy comes along and flips it all on its head. Humor exposes the gap between what humans think is serious and what really matters. Words, grammar, and social taboos are treated with utmost importance, as if a misplaced syllable could end civilization. But comedians show that these rules are arbitrary, mutable, and often hilariously illogical. By exaggerating the rules, twisting meaning, or breaking taboos in creative ways, humor highlights just how absurd human obsession with language really is. Comedians like George Carlin mastered this principle perfectly. He didn't just tell jokes. He dissected language itself, poked at its inconsistencies, and revealed the irrational fear humans have of words. He took ordinary, mundane expressions and exposed the underlying hypocrisy, the social rituals, and the contradictions. Humor works because it shines a spotlight on these absurdities, showing humans that the rules they take so seriously are, in reality, flexible, context-dependent, and often created out of collective fear rather than logic. By laughing at language, humans start to see the arbitrary power they've assigned to it. Language rules exist largely to maintain social order, but humor reminds us that order is a human construct, not a natural law. Politeness rules, forbidden words, and proper etiquette were invented by societies to manage behavior, avoid conflict, and create predictability. But predictability doesn't necessarily equal meaning or truth. Humor exploits the difference between constructed order and natural chaos. Comedians play with words, twist meanings, and invert rules, creating a safe space where humans can confront the absurdity of their own linguistic habits. When someone swears at the right moment in a joke, the tension between social expectation and reality produces laughter. Humans respond instinctively, recognizing the gap between the rule and its enforcement. Even the simplest jokes rely on this principle. A pun, for example, depends on the multiple meanings of a word or phrase. The humor arises because humans have been trained to assign fixed meaning to words, yet language itself is fluid. The pun exposes this flexibility and mocks the rigidity of rules. It shows that words are tools, symbols, and sounds, powerful only because humans collectively invest meaning in them. Without humor, these inconsistencies might go unnoticed, and humans would continue acting as if language is sacred, immutable, and morally charged. Comedy reminds us that it is neither. Humor also highlights context, timing, and delivery. The elements often ignored when humans obsess over forbidden words. The same sentence can be a compliment, an insult, or a joke, depending on tone, timing, and audience. Comedy exaggerates these variables, making humans painfully aware of their inconsistencies. A well-timed sarcastic remark can expose hypocrisy, reveal irony, and provoke laughter while simultaneously demonstrating that offense is situational, socially constructed, and often overblown. Humor is not just entertainment. It is a tool for critical observation, teaching humans to question why certain words or rules are feared while others are ignored. Political humor is another powerful example. Satire has existed for centuries, using exaggeration, irony, and absurdity to reveal societal contradictions. Comedians point out that laws, regulations, and linguistic rules are often arbitrary, inconsistent, or hypocritical. When politicians get caught up in outrage over a single phrase, comedians respond by magnifying the absurdity. The joke works because humans instinctively recognize the overreaction and laugh at the disparity between societal fear and actual harm. Humor, in this sense, is a corrective lens. It exposes the irrationality of human behavior regarding language, censorship, and taboo. Humor also thrives on the forbidden. The seven words controversy is a perfect example. Words that were once considered dangerous, offensive, or morally corrupting became material for jokes precisely because society feared them. Comedians realized that human fear assigned power to these words. By using them in a controlled, humorous context, they demonstrated that the words themselves are harmless. Society feared the sound, the perceived intention, and the potential reaction, but humor stripped away that fear and revealed the emptiness of the taboo. Humans laughed, realized the overreaction, and began to question why certain words were banned in the first place. Comedy transforms fear into insight. Even observational humor works this way. Comedians notice mundane inconsistencies, linguistic absurdities, and social contradictions. A sentence spoken literally may be interpreted figuratively. A compliment may be mistaken for an insult, and a polite word may trigger offense depending on context. Humor exaggerates these situations, allowing humans to see the rules for what they are: social constructs with exceptions, contingencies, and loopholes. When a comedian points out that adults panic over a single word while ignoring systemic problems, the audience laughs because they recognize truth behind the absurdity. Humor exposes the cognitive dissonance humans maintain about language rules. Wordplay is a central element. Puns, double entendres, irony, and sarcasm all rely on humans assigning meaning to words and then subverting expectations. The humor arises when the audience recognizes the rule, anticipates the violation, and experiences the surprise or cognitive twist. This mechanism highlights just how arbitrary many of the rules are. A single word, shifted in context or tone, can transform meaning entirely. Humor teaches humans that meaning is constructed, perception matters, and rigidity in language rules is not only unnecessary but laughable. Comedy also allows humans to confront discomfort safely. Social rules, taboos, and linguistic prohibitions are designed to prevent offense, conflict, or emotional harm. But these rules often create tension because they suppress natural human expression. Humor provides an outlet, allowing people to navigate linguistic taboos without real-world consequences. Swearing in a joke, for example, carries risk in a social vacuum, but is accepted in performance because humans understand the intent. Comedy demonstrates that words are instruments of expression, not inherently dangerous objects. Humans respond positively when rules are bent in this controlled environment because it allows observation without harm. Cultural commentary benefits immensely from humor. Comedians expose how societies overreact to language, fear expression, and enforce arbitrary rules. By exaggerating absurdity, humor reveals underlying irrationalities. Humans overemphasize words, punish innocuous statements, and create fear around symbols rather than actions. Comedy encourages reflection, allowing audiences to understand that offense, morality, and propriety are subjective, contextual, and socially constructed. Humor teaches humans that language rules are not universal truths, but tools created and enforced by humans themselves. Timing and delivery are critical in this context. Humor works because humans recognize the incongruity between societal rules and reality. A joke must be told at the right moment, with the right tone, and in the appropriate context. A word that is forbidden in one setting may be hilarious in another. Comedians manipulate these variables to reveal absurdity, challenge perception, and provoke laughter. Humor demonstrates the fragility of human obsession with words and rules, showing that context, not vocabulary, defines impact. Humor also functions as a social corrective. By laughing at linguistic overreactions, humans collectively acknowledge the absurdity of fear-driven censorship. Comedy exposes the arbitrary nature of taboos, social hierarchies, and linguistic hierarchies. Forbidden words, once feared, become tools for critique, reflection, and amusement. Humor, in this sense, empowers humans to question authority, examine cultural norms, and resist unnecessary control. The laughter itself becomes evidence that words are inert, and only human interpretation gives them perceived power. Even slapstick and physical comedy rely on similar principles. Exaggerated reactions to mundane events, bumping into furniture, spilling drinks, or stubbing toes, highlight that human perception assigns significance to events and language that may not objectively exist. Humor magnifies the gap between perceived danger and actual harm. Forbidden words often accompany physical humor, illustrating how context, tone, and emotional intensity amplify linguistic impact. Comedy bridges the gap between abstract rules and lived experience, showing humans that the fear they assign to words is often misplaced. Humor also fosters resilience. By laughing at linguistic absurdities, humans learn to navigate complex social rules with flexibility and creativity. Comedians demonstrate that language rules can be bent, twisted, or ignored without catastrophic consequence. Audiences internalize this lesson, reducing fear, increasing confidence, and fostering critical thinking. Humor transforms the perception of words from threatening to playful, from restrictive to liberating. Humans, in essence, learn that laughter is a tool for cognitive liberation. Even absurdist and surreal humor works on this principle. Nonsensical phrases, bizarre combinations of words, and invented language reveal that meaning is not fixed, that rules can be subverted, and that humans overreact when structure is violated. Humor demonstrates that linguistic rigidity is optional, socially constructed, and often arbitrary. The audience laughs because they recognize that humans have been taking language too seriously for too long. Comedy serves as a mirror, reflecting the irrationality of obsession over vocabulary, syntax, and taboo. Ultimately, humor is the most effective lens through which to view language, social rules, and human psychology. By exaggerating, bending, and subverting linguistic norms, comedians reveal the absurdity of human fear, overreaction, and obsession with words. Humor transforms perceived danger into insight, oppression into play, and rules into reflection. Humans laugh not only because it's funny, but because laughter confirms that language rules are flexible, context matters, and fear of words is largely performative. Comedy is both entertainment and education, showing humans that absurdity is everywhere, especially in how seriously they take themselves.